It was raining heavily the night of March 13th, 2010. It was a Saturday night. The police say that Greg came to Providence, got drunk, fell in the river, and drowned.
Drunk? No. Drowning? No. Nothing adds up. That's why so strongly, if you knew Greggy, you'd understand the pieces do not fit.
And what about that bar owned by police officers? The Red Room at 1 Fox Place, Providence. Since then, they've changed their name to Saints and Sinners Lounge, perhaps to hide what they don't want known. One would think that a bar owned by police officers would have a better reputation than most. Then perhaps now we should have a better look at the Providence Police Department.
Operation Deception came to light back in March when state police arrested 6 people in connection with an alleged cocaine trafficking ring, including 3 Providence police officers.
One of the officers arraigned today worked closely with teenagers as a school resource officer here at Central High in Providence.
3 Providence police officers are dirty that they ran a massive cocaine distribution operation.
As a Providence police officer is convicted of raping a 19-year-old woman.
A Providence police officer found guilty of raping a woman while on duty.
A vicious beating by Providence police.
A police officer accused of beating a suspect in handcuffs.
The latest in a series of cases involving Providence police officers.
And then there's Colonel Esserman, Chief of Police. His reputation stands by itself.
Providence chapter of the NAACP is calling for the resignation of the Providence police chief. Suspension of Providence Police Colonel Dean Esserman.
In part, as a body, we are saddened by Colonel Esserman's continued disrespect of the public and those officers under his command. He's been chief in Providence for 8 years and is currently working without a contract. In June, the police union voted no confidence in Colonel Esserman, told the sergeant he should have dumped hot coffee on him for being disrespectful. Colonel Esserman has lost his ability to lead this police department effectively and has also displayed a less than professional demeanor towards members of the public and officers who serve this police department.
Esserman should not be paid more than his new boss, Public Safety Commissioner Stephen Parry. Right now, Esserman makes $168,000 a year.
The Providence Police Department is under fire once again, this time for the mysterious death of 23-year-old Gregory Hart. ABC 6 reporter Parker Gavigan has more.
On the night Greg Hart went missing, he was out celebrating with some old college buddies here at the Red Room in downtown Providence. He had just gotten a new job with a software company, a job that was going to give him some real money for the first time. Life was taking off.
He put a smile on everybody's face and people loved him.
Greg graduated with honors from UMass, got accepted into an officer's program to be a Navy fighter pilot. His family says he wasn't your typical late-night partier.
Whoever met my son thought he was quite a young man, and he was impressive.
Hart drove down to Providence from Dedham, Mass. in his Mustang after getting a late start. It was 10 o'clock, and he was heading out with Will McClendon, Zach Pisco, and Zach's girlfriend, Megan O'Keefe. The group hit up the Red Room. What happened next is unclear. A police report says some type of disturbance occurred. Was it a fight? Did someone get punched? His friends are not talking to the media. What we do know is that Greg went missing. That was clear. Providence police said they were on the case. 2.5 days later, a different group of Hart's friends from Massachusetts who were not with him that night found his body. It wasn't the police. The 23-year-old lay tangled in fallen debris on the riverbank of the Woonasquatucket, less than 1 mile from where he was last seen alive.
I think it's pretty ridiculous that we had to find him when we didn't even know where we were in Providence. We didn't know the area at all.
Rhode Island's medical examiner said Greg Hart drowned, that his blood alcohol content was 0.25.
Let's re-examine that medical examiner, Dr. William Cox.
Medical board records show Cox, beginning in March of 96, between July of 96, Cox pled guilty to 9 misdemeanor counts, including 3 of them for failure to disclose useful information. According to the documents, what Cox was doing was using county facilities to do autopsies for other counties for personal profit.
Now ask yourself if it's possible that crooked cops could have had a crooked medical examiner manipulate the outcome of Greg's autopsy, since the injuries listed were only visible on the surface. And is it possible that the cause of death was something other than drowning?
Not a lot of business is getting done these days inside Bob Corkery's office. He's Greg's grandfather, and he posted a $70,000 reward. He says Greg was murdered, and he's got pictures of his grandson's beaten-up body before he was embalmed at a funeral home.
His nose is damaged, his eye is damaged, his left hand has a bad bruise on his little knuckle. He has a bruise on his right hip. There's 2 holes in the boy's shins. Same locations. I wish somebody had taken a look to see if those were restraints. How else do you get 2 of those? If you're in the water floating down a stream, you hit something that gives you 2 shots the same place on both legs? I don't think so.
Some other parts of the case started to raise eyebrows in Hart's family. Providence detective Mark Sacco first began investigating Greg's disappearance on March 15th, just 1 day before his body was found. But ABC6 has learned that Detective Sacco owns the property. That's right, the property where the Red Room sits.
You gotta be kidding me. I'm talking to the guy with my son was last seen at this place. That's a conflict of interest. In other words, no, what? Yes, send somebody else.
So the investigator, Detective Sacco, owns the property where Greg was last seen alive. As if that's not a bad enough conflict of interest. It goes deeper than that.
Sacco may own the property, but Rebecca Carroll, seen here in provocative online photos, owns the Red Room. Rebecca Carroll is the wife of Providence police officer Sean Carroll. That means 2 officers make money from the Red Room bar. Remember, a police report mentions some type of disturbance at the Red Room that night.
Has anybody interviewed the bartenders that night? Has anybody interviewed the bouncer?
If so, there is no mention of it in any reports. ABC6 tried talking to Detective Sacco, the Carrolls, and Police Chief Dean Esserman. Hart was found in the river with his wallet and iPhone. AT&T records detail text messages and calls between Greg and his friends shortly before he disappeared. His last known contact was an 8-minute call at 1:21 in the morning to his friend Will McClendon, who was with him at the Red Room. What was said? Where was Greg? McClendon isn't talking to ABC6, and here is what Greg's iPhone looks like now. It's in pieces. Apple, the phone's manufacturer, says it was taken apart in a way that no information can be retrieved.
Who did you get that phone from?
I got them from the Providence Police, from a detective.
Here's an update and a closer look at the cell phone evidence.
And simply got drunk and drowned.
But the parents of a Dedham, Massachusetts man pulled from a Providence river last March say they have new evidence their son was the victim of foul play. NECN's Greg Wayland is here with their story. Greg?
Well, RD, the new evidence concerns the victim's cell phone, and it does raise many new questions.
This is the way the phone came to us.
An Apple iPhone in pieces, allegedly the way it came back from a Rhode Island State Police lab where technicians said they could not retrieve any data because it had been in water. It belonged to 23-year-old Gregory Hart of Dedham, Mass., pulled dead from the Woonsotucket River in Providence, Rhode Island last March. Hart's family took the cell phone to computer retrieval experts at the Cambridge, Mass.-based company Tech Fusion. They used an identical phone and part from the original phone to build a surrogate.
We were able to extract call logs as well as SMS text messages, logs and messages itself.
But most important, they say they can prove the phone had never been submerged in water.
We've been dealing with a lot of spilled water cases, laptops, data recoveries, over 20 years now. And that phone was not in water.
Also, they say a key liquid indicator resembling this small black bordered dot appears to have been forcibly removed. Yet Providence police maintain Gregory Hart drowned in the river after leaving the nearby Red Room nightclub around 1 a.m. Sunday, March 14th, where he'd gone to be with a friend home on leave from the Air Force. His parents believe Hart was beaten and dumped in the river shortly before he was found 2 days later. They base this on the battered condition of his body and now the cell phone evidence. And they have always distrusted the Providence police version of events.
Because they were very antagonistic right from the start. We got nothing. They didn't look for Greg. They don't return phone calls.
The Providence police didn't even look for my son. Okay, it took me bringing 50 children down from Massachusetts to Providence to find my son.
Also, an initial police incident report states Hart's cell phone and house keys were found in the nightclub parking lot, and that investigators called the phone and it rang several times. 2 days later, the report states that the cell phone was found on Hart's partially submerged body. And the family says friends who were with their son at the Red Room have gone strangely silent. Marion Hart is frustrated.
I want the truth. I want this to shed some light.
Did they talk at all today about those retrieved text messages and the log of the telephone calls and whether they reveal anything?
Well, they didn't because they don't want to. They feel they might, if they made those public, jeopardize any future criminal investigation. But there has never been a criminal investigation. They may also be thinking that they don't want to threaten any lawsuit that they might have against the Providence police.
Greg Whalen this afternoon. Thank you, Latoya.
The details and evidence in this case overwhelmingly point to murder and a cover-up of that murder, which means that there are criminals walking free amongst us, and some of them may be wearing badges. It's important to keep in mind just who might make the suspect list.
We're going to bring up Greg Hart, basically a victim, not accidental death, a victim of murder.
This is Dan Bedandi, host of Truth Radio in Rhode Island. Since the beginning of this mystery, Truth Radio and we the people of Rhode Island have done whatever we can do to make sure that people don't forget about this very important case.
This is what the guy looks like. Very sharp kid, A student. I believe he got accepted to the Air Force Academy. There's a picture of the bar right there. I mean, you could Google it. And it was funny too. The other night for the Vigil, the night before they had the Saints and Sinners signs up, but the night before they still had the Red Room signs up, and they took those signs down before the Vigil. Yeah, this is crazy stuff, man. I tell you.
This is crazy stuff. But before I leave you, I just want to say that the reason this case is so important is, first and foremost, justice for the family and some kind of closure here to know what happened to that young man.
Yep.
But after that, everybody knows the Providence Police Department is wrapped up in several forms of corruption, including cocaine dealing. 14 officers just recently were arrested and put through the system for dealing cocaine, including the school resource officer inside the school was one of the men who pleaded guilty and went to jail for this cocaine dealing. But there is a handful of Providence police officers, I'm convinced, that are wrapped up in this murder and involved in a cover-up. And in order for that to happen, it would then have to involve the say-so of the chief of police, Colonel Dean Esserman. Probably one of the most horrible people I've ever met in my life.
Absolutely. And now the whole city of Providence is corrupt. Now, Providence, Rhode Island's a small state in the Union, but the biggest corruption. And, you wouldn't believe the stuff that happens down here in Rhode Island. And me and Adam have to deal with it all the time. And, people like us, we have the guts to expose this. And, unfortunately, it was murder, but I think he is going to bring the light. His murder is going to bring the light to the truth and bring all these scumbag cockroaches out of the corners.
March 13th, 2011, on the one-year anniversary of Greg's disappearance, his family and friends came from Massachusetts to Providence to have a candlelight vigil and a memorial. We met them by the river at the spot where Greg's body was found. This was my first time meeting Greg's mother, Mary Ann, in person. If we don't find answers for crimes like this, and we don't seek out those responsible, then what kind of world would we be leaving for our children? One without justice, one without freedom. So we all began the nearly 1 mile walk back to the Red Room to hold a candlelight vigil outside, not only an act of remembrance, but an act of defiance, boldly standing up against a system where power has gone mad. Because the action of the law has failed us so far in this case, it's become an action of the people. These people. A couple of Providence officers tried to provide an escort, as if some kind of gesture.
Because he could have died at like 1 o'clock in the morning, so,
yeah.
You know. Well, he most likely probably did.
Yep, people still keep going down, yeah. When we found out about this, we actually walked the same path he did, and everything, when we brought the report with us, everything according to the official report, we try to follow that and simulate. There's no way in hell somebody can do that. You know. How do you fall over that?
You don't.
Then the man should roll around it.
Well, it's been a year, and he's really trying to help us out. The cops don't, call us back, nothing. They don't want anything to do with us. Just want this to kind of tell them we didn't forget. We know that this wasn't an accident. Somebody put him in there, and I think they are pretty sure that they know who it is. They're hiding it. And I don't know.
After all this time. My name is Dan Bidonda.
Can you spell your last name?
Bidonda.
And you are?
I'm a host of Truth Radio in Providence, Rhode Island, and I'm here because we expose corruption in the state of Rhode Island. And what happened to this family here is a sick and despicable, poor display of the law enforcement here in Providence, Rhode Island. This is a message to all you corrupt people. We're going to expose whoever you are. We're not afraid of you. I don't care if you're a police officer, I don't care if you're the FBI or the CIA, whoever you are, you will be brought to justice because you don't violate the people, the Constitution, and especially disrupt an entire poor family like this. We know the city's corrupt here. We know we have corrupt officials here in the state. Our senators are corrupt, our governors are corrupt. We know it's all corruption here, and we're going to expose you.
If you have any questions, comments, or information about this case, here are the online resources that you'll need.